Hi, my name is Cory. I'm an alcoholic. Before I got up here, I was downstairs saying a little prayer, and the only one thing I'm asking God to help me do today is to control my emotions. I am a very emotional individual. There's a few things in that prayer, but that's the main one that I want to have happen, is that I'm not a blubbering idiot up here, because I have that ability, especially when I look out and see people with tears in their eyes. So control that, people. Thanks, Dee, for that. You know, when I met Daniel, I love having the last word. Brant, I'm not going to say anything bad about you, because I know you're going to come up after me, but I have the last word on Dee. So when I first got sober, like you said, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but Stace moved out of the home, and that first 4 or 5 months I was on my own, and I dove into AA, and there was a group. There was a lot of people who helped me, and there was a group of about 5 of us that we did a lot of things together, and boating was one of them, and. And one of no. And Daniel was not raised around water, and he doesn't really, and he still to this day doesn't learn how to swim. We go to Pal every now and then, and he's out there just doggy paddling around. And we took him down, and he didn't even own a swimming suit. And so we go out there, and we pull up, and he comes out there, and he's got these like cargo pants, shorts on, and with pockets. I'm like, you're gonna drown. And so we get out there, and we were surfing at the time, and he never surfed. And if you know D, he gets really focused when he's like trying to do something. It's just focused. And so we're like, D, you got to take those shorts off. You're not gonna be able to swim. So he's just out there in his boxers, and it was just 5 guys, good friends, so it wasn't that big a deal. But so he gets up, he tries a couple of times, he couldn't do it, and then finally he gets up, and he is just laser focused on doing this. And again, he's in his boxers. And that was the day we changed his name from Big D to D. Sorry, D. Love you. That was awesome. Michael gave me some of the best advice before this. Today at the morning meeting, he's asking me how I'm coming along with this, and I'm like, it's interesting. And he said, well, the best prayer to say is one that I say, and it's a rhyming prayer. And he said, let the voice be mine. Let the words be thine. Yeah, let the voice be mine, but the words be thine. And I hope it's going to be a long 45 minutes. I hope as I'm up here that's what happens. That, I've been stressing about this for some time, and I just got to get out of the way. And so, let's see. Well, and there's a lot of people who aren't of the AA class here. I can see there's some we'd like to call them in AA, you normies. There are a lot of normies here, and bad advice I gave to my wife was, hey, I'm not going to call and invite anybody. That's just weird. So you can do whatever you want. And apparently she sent out an all points bulletin. So thank you for for coming and supporting us. And being a part of this. On the way here, Stacy and I were talking. I cannot believe it's been 15 years. And it seems like it was just yesterday. And Daniel reminds me, I'm getting to be the old timer in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I still feel like an adolescent. It shouldn't be me. And I had an experience the other day. And if I swear up here, just know I'm quoting. There's a lot. My child's back there, my mother-in-law's here, my mom's here. So, anyways, I had my car detailed from I'll put a plug in for him, Sonny. He came out and detailed my car, and there was the individual that was working for him at the time. He reached out. He actually came out to the men's meeting on Wednesday, and he came one time, and he loved it. And as he got done detailing my car, I was asking him, how you doing? What, you didn't come back? Is there anything I can do to help? And he started rambling on about how he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't want to get too close to people in this group. And this is when I realized I'm becoming the crotchety old timer. And I said, you know what? I've been around these rooms long enough to know a bullshit story when I hear one. And that is one. And I walked off him as I'm walking away, and it was with love. And as I walked away, I'm like, I'm those guys, like those guys back there. I'm them. I'm the crotchety old timer. So hopefully he comes back and he finds the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous like I did. Well, I'll get into this. I was born and raised in a little town of Grace, Idaho. I'm the baby of 6 children, five that are living, and mom and dad, and one older sister, and 3 older brothers. And the only thing I remember of my upbringing was our family was always together. It was sports, farm. I was raised on a farm. My dad was a farmer, and I was raised on a farm, and that's what I learned doing that and playing sports. And I remember being the youngest, I got beat up by my older siblings a lot. I remember, that they were just ruthless at times. I was when you go to the fair, the little things, the ducks that come across, you got a little gun shooting. I was the duck. And I remember the BB guns out there, and they're coming through, and they're shooting me as I'm walking across. And, things like that. And I remember we had horses and cows and everything. And I remember my older brothers putting me on the tame calf to see how long I could ride it. And it turns out that wasn't the tame calf at all. And, and just doing all sorts of farm things. I don't have a lot of memories of Grace, Idaho, other than that. I remember playing sports. I remember sports was a big deal to me growing up, and I remember my dad he coached a lot of Little League basketball. I think I was in the 3rd grade, and there was a 4th grade league, and they needed one more player, and they could have another team in this league. And I was like, it's going to be me. I know I'm going to come and play. And they wouldn't do it. And I remember crying because they wouldn't let me play up with the 4th graders. And I still don't know why you did that. And that was my memory of growing up, was family, sports, farm, work, all sorts, things just like that. And we didn't have a ton of money growing up, and like my mom always said, we are the richest people on earth because we have each other, and they believed that. And one thing my dad would always say is, we're so poor we don't have a pot to piss in. And I still don't know what that means. Oh no, it's a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. I need to Google that. I have no idea what that means. but apparently it means you're poor. I don't know. And so that was, growing up in Idaho, and I had cousins and everything. And about the summer between after getting out of 5th grade and 6th grade, we moved to Menden, Utah, apparently to find a new pot to piss in. I don't know. And so we moved to Cache Valley, and we get there, and that was my starting 6th grade, and I moved into Menden, and there was probably 5, 6 guys that were my same age that I just hooked up with, and really good friends, and I'm still really good friends with them today. We played all sorts of sports, and basketball, baseball, football. We were just always together, and I don't remember. I hear when people get up here and talk and tell their story, having a bad childhood. I do not remember that. Mine was. Why did you invite them? Mine was great. I had an older brother that we would spend countless hours playing backyard baseball. We invented this baseball game, and there was a tree and as first base, a hole in the ground as second base, and the porch was third base, and then you get home. And we had ghost runners, and it was amazing. We were gonna patent this and sell it, and with the ghosts and everything. It was just amazing. We spent countless hours doing that and just playing and all sorts of things like that. We just had a great family. And I remember about 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, it was my first, I started getting a little not anxious. I started getting, I wanted to try some things, and that was my first kind of defiant moment of trying some chemicals, substances, and it was cigarettes. I found a pack of cigarettes up on Cotter's Trail, and I remember trying that, and I remember liking that feeling, but I came out of the womb an entrepreneur, and I don't know what it was. None of my siblings or my parents have that for some reason, but I came out thinking differently, and I remember having that smoke, but the entrepreneurial spirit, I sold the rest of them. And it was, the profit margins were awesome. I found them and just sold them off. And I remember having that, and that was really my first bad experience of a chemical or something like that. And I didn't do that again until my junior year. And going into my junior year, well, let me back up. I was, my 9th grade is when I started high school, and I went to Mountain Crest High School, and I was the last year that 9th graders were part of that high school. And I was seriously in 9th grade about this tall. So I was large for my age, and growing up playing sports, I was highly involved in sports. I could shave. My 8th grade, Brant's got a picture of my 8th grade picture of just a cool mustache. And I remember that football season, it was Little League football, and my teammates were giving me crap that I needed to shave. It looked bad. It was horrible, but I loved it. And they said, "Okay, you got to shave." I'm like, "Well, as soon as we win a game, I'll shave." We didn't win a game the whole season. We scored 1 touchdown. It was the last game, so it stayed on the whole time. But I grew and was involved in sports. And my 9th grade, I was in high school, and as a 9th grader, I made the varsity basketball team. And I was involved there, and I played. I didn't play a lot as a freshman, but I was involved, and the coaches knew me. So when my sophomore grade, I started for the varsity basketball team, and I started for the varsity football team. I was a free safety on football, and basketball I was point guard and shooting guard, and I loved it. It was my life. It was fun, and I had a lot of good friends, and I was known. I wouldn't say popular, because I don't know what that means, but I had a lot of great friends. And it was my junior year. My junior year is when things started to change for me. I remember that junior year, I started dabbling back into some tobacco and things like that. And that was the second game of the season for football. I got hurt. I sprained my ankle, and so I had to go through some therapy. And so after football practice, we would drive over to Utah State, and we'd use their facility to get treatment. And on the way there, Coach I don't know why I'm crying. An assistant coach that was driving me there stopped in and got a six-pack of Coors Light and asked me if I wanted to, and I said, sure, let's try it. And that was my first drink. It was my junior year, and I don't remember, when people up here, they explain that first time they felt it. They felt taller, they felt prettier, they felt like they could tackle the world. I don't remember that. I do remember that feeling, and I love that euphoric feeling. And there's no doubt that I liked that feeling. And that started me down a path that was okay. And I kind of went against my parents' teachings and my upbringing, and I started to dabble in that kind of stuff. I didn't start right into day drinking or anything like that. And because of my love for sports, I think that would kind of kept me out of a lot of trouble, because if you got caught drinking, you were kicked off the teams. And at my junior year, I was still starting and playing, and we were really good in both sports. We took, I think, second my junior year in football, second in basketball, and in state, and I was involved in that. And that fear of getting kicked off, I did not want. I loved playing sports. But that introduced me. That was the introduction to alcohol. And between summer times, and this is where my mom and dad might not know a lot of this stuff, so sorry. It was funny because there was a little bit of overlap. We would play football, and we were always, in the state playoffs. And then there was basketball that we wouldn't have to try out for because we were already on a team. But there was this little gap of like a week where we weren't playing anything. And that was a fun week. That was definitely a week that we couldn't get kicked off because I wasn't a part of a team. And I drank quite a bit at that time. And then we went out and explored, and that was part of it. But as soon as basketball started up, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get kicked off this team. As I went through high school, I don't have a lot of memories of. The only thing I remember is those times that I think relates to Alcoholics Anonymous and what we learn in the book is drinking to oblivion, the allergy, the phenomenon of craving, which I didn't understand until I started reading that book. But looking back, those things I could see. Whenever I drank, I was always that friend that was drinking to oblivion. I was always the one that, sorry, Mom and Dad, but was running around, and Kesley, with their underwear or naked. I was that guy. Sorry, sis, my daughter is right there. But that's don't drink. That was me. I was the oblivion. I still remember we had some trips up to Jackson Hole with a bunch of my friends, And I would have an assigned individual to watch out for me. I had 2 trees out front that I could grab onto and throw up between, and then grab back in and grab the Jaeger or whatever it was that we had. And that's what I remember drinking. It was always to oblivion. And as I went through high school, I had that conflict because of how I was raised and because I knew right and wrong. I had that conflict that I shouldn't be doing this type of stuff. And through my high school year, I got done with basketball my senior year, and we graduated, and we had a senior trip, and that it got really bad on that senior trip. And I remember coming home, I don't know how long after I graduated, but I had this conversation with my mom. She probably doesn't remember that, but she asked me what my plans were. What was I going to do? And I didn't know, because I had opportunities to go play sports, both basketball and football. Basketball was my passion. I loved playing football, but basketball is where I kind of excelled a little bit more at. And so I had some offers to go and play, and I didn't know what to do. And she asked me that. And she kind of hinted towards, why don't you try looking at going on a mission? I was raised LDS. I remember going to church and doing all those things that we did. And it wasn't that I hated or I had a bad experience with church. I didn't at all. I just never really gave it a chance. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe I'll just at least look at that. And so she gave me, I had a copy of my scriptures. So I started reading it. I'm like, well, this is kind of my approach to Alcoholics Anonymous too, is like, I'm going to actually read and try and figure out what this is. So I started reading that book that she gave me. And I remember sitting in my bed reading these scriptures that she gave me. And there was a story about a man who went out hunting, and he was racked because of his sins. And I could relate with this guy. And it said he prayed all day and all night to try and basically get right with God. And that was the first time I remember feeling and recognizing and knowing what that was. And that was what we refer to as the sunlight of the Spirit. I vividly remember that, sitting in my bed reading that passage and feeling that love that God can give to us, and that love that cannot be mocked or mimicked by anything else. And at that time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and serve this mission. So I did. And I straightened up. I did everything I had to do. I went, I repented and got right, and I served a great mission, and I loved it. I served in Toronto, Canada. I love Toronto. It's just a melting pot. So the people I taught were from Jamaica, Ghana, Iran, Iraq. And the cool thing about that is a lot of countries, because it is a melting pot, I had the opportunity to teach a lot of different people about God, and a lot of them had never even heard, or was because of where they were raised, or the country of origin, God was not allowed. Some of the concerns when I would teach these people to get them baptized, one of the concerns was, like Iraq or Iran, if we get baptized into your church and I go back, I will be beheaded. And that was a real concern with the type of people and that I taught. And it was a fantastic experience. I loved it. And it changed me. And I look at speaking of AA, it talks about our spiritual malady. What we really have. Yes, it talks about the phenomenon of craving, the allergy to alcohol. But what we really suffer with is a spiritual malady. We don't have God in our lives. And I look at that. That is when God came into my life for the first time. And I allowed him in. And I think that got me on the correct path. And I went down that path. Fast forward, got home, went to college, Utah State. I never went back to basketball or playing sports. I just decided to go to Utah State. And I got big into kayaking, whitewater kayaking. It was awesome. It was my passion. And it was so much fun. And me and my buddies, we got into this, and that was actually how I met my wife. We were up in Idaho, and she and actually cousin Kim, who is here, wanted to learn how to kayak, and they went into this outdoor rec center or outdoor rec club at Utah State to rent a kayak. And my buddies were in there, and they picked him up, and they brought him to where we were kayaking, and Stace got out, and we met, and she came with my buddies, and she left with me. And now granted, it was because I was the only one that had a heater. but regardless, she left with me. And for the next year and a half, Stace and I were like friends. We didn't really start dating, but over time, there was like groups of friends, and eventually we realized we're the only friends hanging out. And we did this for a long time, so we kind of grew into this love. And so in '99, we got married, and up until this point, alcohol was not an issue in my life. I had a great life, and I didn't dabble. I was good, and I had a great life. Moving forward, thinking about going and doing a thorough first step. How I did my first step was by reading Doctor's Opinion and Bill's story, which I really relate with, and just kind of looking for the similarities and learning what it means to be an alcoholic. And looking back on that, I started to, the maybe pills every now and then, because I had a headache. And instead of Advil, why not take a Percocet? Sleeping pills. I got into sleeping pills because I couldn't sleep. I mean, everything was a valid reason for this medicinal purpose. And so I know, and I had a friend who would write some scripts for me. And looking back, I could doing that first step, I could see the allergy being triggered. And anything that would make me, any form of alcohol, I started to really make excuses to take it. The sleeping pills, I know the pill heads out here, when you shake the bottle, you know exactly how many pills are left. You might have an issue. And that was me, but it was for good reasons, right? I couldn't sleep, or I was in pain, whatever the reason was. Fast forward to 2006, 2007. My line of work, I got into real estate and started doing some real estate developing. And in 2006, 2007, 2008, the crap hit the fan. And there was a big downtick in the market. I had loaned and borrowed a lot of money to do projects. And it was not looking good financially. And looking back, that financial fear was just paralyzing to me. And so I got on On top of some other things, I got on an antidepressant because I was so depressed. I couldn't get out of bed. Didn't want to get out of bed. I went from, I weighed like 190. I got down to like 160 because of the stress, and couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything. So they put me on some antidepressants. I'm like, okay, let's try it. And my neighbor at the time was going through a divorce, and he was on the same antidepressants. And we were outside talking, and he didn't like. He was a normie, and he'd have a drink every now and then. And he told me one time, he's like, I hate these antidepressants. When I drink, when I have one beer, it feels like I've had 3 or 4. You know where I'm going. That was exactly my thought. As soon as he said that, I knew what the answer was. And that was the answer. And Stace was going to run a race, and she was going to leave town, and I needed some relief, and that was going to be it. So I went down, and she was gone, and I went and got a 6-pack of Coors Light, and I drank it that weekend, knowing I needed that relief, and I deserved it, and I needed it. And I drank that, and I remember that first one, it worked. That was awesome. I feel so much better. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, I started standing up because I was upstairs in my TV room when I was doing this, and I drink just consecutively. And the third or fourth one, I got up and I just fell down right on my face. My first thought was, why did I do this? This was such a horrible idea. And she was gone for 4 days. And that night, I think it was a Thursday night, that was the night that I decided to do that. And Friday, after I saying this was a horrible idea, you know what I did? I triggered that allergy. And that went on. And it came on hard and fast. From that time, within about 2 or 3 weeks, it was 20 to 30 a day. And I would go to, I remember driving just to a vacant field, because that fear was still there. And I did not want to take phone calls. I did not want anybody coming by my house or coming by the office. So I would go to vacant fields by myself and just drink all day long, and then somehow get back home. And it kept like that for the longest time. December 31st of 2008, and Stace did not know. My wife did not know that I was drinking. And December 31st, 2008, it's 2007, sorry. There's some things that we can joke about, but there's part of my story. There's some things that I, still feel like, I hate thinking about stuff like that. That it's some of the things I did, and one of those was driving drunk with my children. And that December 31st, my brothers-in-law and I don't know if you guys remember this, but we went hunting that day. And we went out coyote hunting, and I brought Kesley, and she was 5, and Crew was 2, and we were out hunting. And I remember drinking, and I mean, when these guys hunt, it's crazy. Like, they had a paraplane, and one of them's flying up in we're hunting coyotes. One's flying up in the air, or the paraplane, and they have radios down, and we're in trucks chasing these dogs. And so they're radioing down, and it's definitely was not safe for what I was doing. And I remember, I don't know what got me to this point, but we got done with this. We went back home. Stace said that there's a party over at our neighbor's house. Do you want to go? And I'm like, no, I don't. Don't want to have no desire. And that was the night that I made the decision that I think I want to be done with this life. And looking back, I think it was a cry for help, because I went to my pills. I remember taking, it was Ambien, and I don't know how many Ambien I took, but I remember making that thought and that choice. Okay, I'm going to take what's left and drink as many beers as I possibly can, and hopefully that's going to not let me wake up. So I did that, and I woke up, and that was the day that Stace's world turned upside down. She came home. I was in the bedroom, I think, and just beers everywhere, and then the cat was out of the bag. My story was out there, and to a certain degree, I was relieved, right? Because I've been hiding this life that I've been drinking all day, every day, and I was kind of relieved to finally, it's out in the open. I don't have to lie about it anymore. And that was my thought. It was like, okay, it's out in the open. I'm not going to do it. I'm good. And I really believe that, right? We really believe we're done. And so I detoxed off of that at home, and a couple weeks later, that mental obsession, it just kicked my A. And I had no idea, I was not ready for that, but that mental obsession kicked in. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was January 23rd, was when I decided to go. I couldn't do it anymore, so I went and had another drink. And about this time, it was about 3 weeks after, so yeah, January 23rd, somewhere around there, Stace came out again, this time. So let me explain a little bit about Stace. Stace, she's a very clean individual. That was nice, right? She's a designer, interior designer. She likes making people's homes look beautiful, and she does a fantastic job of that. I don't know how many times a day we hear the word, "That's adorable," and probably at least every other day our wood floor is scrubbed on her hands and knees. She's awesome at that kind of stuff, and she loves it. And I blame her mother for that upbringing, because she's the exact same way. And not that they're weird about it, but that's just how they are. And so you can imagine the look or the thought that went through Stacy's mind when she came out in our living room and I'm taking a pee in the living room. On the sofa. Yeah, I love telling that story, especially when it's a mixed crowd, because you get the alcoholics that are laughing and the looks of the normies. Just keep coming back. That's nothing. So that Stace found me taking a pee in our sofa. I don't remember any of this, and that was she. At that time, she just decided I should probably take some time away from home. So I actually went up with my parents for a couple of nights and stayed up there and got centered and came back down. And I remember her coming home and man, I got to hurry. That went fast. Her coming home and there was the car had a dent in it as well, and I do not remember that. I left sometime in the middle of the night, and that's a horrible, horrible feeling. I have no idea where I went. There was a dent in our car, taking a pee on the sofa, and I don't remember any of this. The oblivion that I talked about in high school, right? I drank to oblivion. I did not want to be here. And it worked. I would drink to that point, but I would do stuff that I had no idea I was doing. We got to fast forward. So that went on for a little bit longer. Then I'm like, I'm not a cocktail drinker. I'm not like Lance or Neil over here, like go and get the martinis. Mine is, let's get a half a gallon of vodka and put it into my water cup, and we're good. That was my drinking, and I figured I can drink vodka, and I don't have to drink nearly as much to get the same feeling. You guys have all been there. So I graduated to vodka, which took me down quick. And that's when I found the cocktail of vodka, Ambien, and Xanax. And every night, I would go to put about that much vodka in my water bottle, go to the shower, pop a couple of Ambien, drink this, hurry and get into bed before something weird happened that I didn't know. And by the time I got in there, if I did something weird, I could just blame it on the Ambien. And I did that for some time. April 14th, 2008, I woke up 7 o'clock on the dot, and I had no recollection of what happened the day before. The day before was a Sunday. I was told we went to church. I probably got up and bore my testimony. But I have no recollection of that. And that was the day that I woke up, and I was at that bitter end, that I had to make a change. And I remember Stace wasn't there, and those 4 horsemen were staring me right in the face. And I went into my closet, grabbed a backpack, threw some stuff in there, walked out, and some of Stacy's family was there, and Dustin, her brother, was there, and I just remember saying, I gotta go get some help. And he drove me around for that day, and by the time we landed at LDS Detox, about 2:30, 3 o'clock, the withdrawals were hitting. It was just feeling horrible, and I finally got into LDS Detox. They admitted me, they checked me all out, my vitals, everything, and I finally got up into my room, and that was when that prayer was said. And hopefully, if you haven't said the prayer, you may not be done, because when you're done, you say that prayer. And that prayer is, help. I can't do this anymore. And I had, up until this point, alcohol became my God. I remember consciously making the decision that God didn't exist. And I wanted, because if God didn't exist, I wouldn't have guilt. And I wouldn't have this remorse of this life that I was living. And so I tried to turn my back on God. And that was the day that I came full circle back to Him. And I remember sitting in detox with the gown on and nothing else in there, and kneeling on that side of my bed and just asking for help. And it's crazy. If you have troubles with God, it's you. It's not Him. I can't tell you how much He loves us. The things that I wanted nothing to do with Him. But as soon as I asked for that help, He was there and He answered me. And I remember sitting in that room and getting the answer to my prayer. And it was in my mind, I said, remember, faith without works is dead. And I still remember that. I hope I never forget it. Because at that time, I could go do the work. I didn't know what that work looked like, but I knew I could do the work. And when I got, the interesting thing about us alcoholics, I think, is I had this faith-promoting experience, right? I had just had this hit rock bottom. I'd said my prayer. I'd got the answer. And 4 days later, I was getting let go or released from the hospital. I'm pleading the doctor to give me something that stops me from help drinking. And so I'm still looking for the chemical answer, even though I got the spiritual answer to that prayer. And that's our minds, right? Like there's got to be a chemical that's going to help us. There's got to be something out there. And I remember that doctor, he said, well, sir, the reason you are here is that exact same mindset. And that it really hit me that is. I'm looking for the chemical answer when it's a spiritual answer. And so I got out. I'd been introduced to Mike prior to this. And I called Mike, Jay. And as like any good alcoholics, the asshole laughed at me. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And I'm like, this is not funny. My world is crumbling. Because at the time, and the only call I got in detox was from, I think, my wife or one of the family members, and that was, you're not welcome back home. And so as I called Mike and he's laughing at me, we go to a meeting. Come to a meeting, meet me here. And so we went down to a meeting, and my AA path started. I went to a meeting. He had me do some simple things: prayer, read, look to serve, call me, read this daily reflection thing, and then hit a meeting every day. And they told me to hit 90 meetings in 90 days. And so I'll do whatever you guys need me to do, because faith without works is dead. I had that answer. Now I have the direction. And that was, come into meetings, sit down, take that cotton out of your mouth and put it in your ears. Sorry, switch that. Take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, and sit down and listen. And I started doing that. And I remember the first 90 days, they said to hit 90 meetings. I hit 147 meetings. And I called Mike, and I started doing this thing. And that was when I met Dee. The first meeting I went to at the Palace, I sat down, and he was sitting a row ahead of me, and he turns around and he shook my hand. And that's what you get here. Sit down, somebody's going to come shake your hand. I guarantee it. Because we know that look when you walk in there, of that hopeless variety that you are. And somebody's going to take you by the hand and guide you through this thing. And that's what I had a lot of guys do. I'm so grateful for that. They grabbed me by the hand and said, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I did it. I went through those steps. And I love the fact that I think I worked those first 3 steps when I said that prayer. I admitted I was powerless. I knew that God was going to help me, and I said that prayer. I went back and worked those thoroughly to find out what it means to be an alcoholic. I had no idea that we had an allergy. I had no idea what the spiritual malady meant. Like, what is that? I had to figure that out. I didn't want somebody else saying, well, okay, you're diagnosed as an alcoholic. I don't even know what that means. The first meeting I went to, I wouldn't introduce myself as an alcoholic because I don't know what that is. And so I went into the doctor's opinion. I went into Bill's story, which I could relate to. And I figured out, I am an alcoholic. Now what? And that's where AA took over. And they showed me the path that I needed to take. Man, I'm so glad I wrote these notes. I haven't looked at them once. God. As was said, Stace left. She took Kesley and crew. They were 5 and 2 at the time, and they were gone. They wanted nothing to do with me. And rightfully so, right? financially, I was broken. I had nothing left, and I was in the negative. Banks after me, and I had to get myself out of this hole. And the cool thing about getting out of that hole for me was, kind of comes back to that answer, faith without works is dead. It started by maybe returning a phone call. It started by sitting down with that guy that would just like me to answer his dang phone, and so I started making meetings with banks. I started making appointments with partners that we had to figure some things out. And that fear left me, that financial fear left as soon as I started working. It took me 6 years to dig out of that hole that I was in, but that fear was gone. And that's why I was drinking, was to put that fear on hold. And I'm so grateful that you guys told me the acronym of fear, face everything and recover. As soon as I heard that in my first 30 days, I'm like, okay, well, I can do that. I can answer a phone call. I can go meet with somebody and say, I've got nothing, but at least I'm here. And that started down this path. And I kept doing these things that you guys taught me to do, and going through these steps and making the amends and looking to serve. And things gradually got better. Stace came back into my life. And it didn't take long. She moved out in April. I think she moved back in October. The kids came back into my life. The cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous and turning our life and will over to God is He is going to make it better. I thought I'd lost everything, and by losing this, when I started doing what was taught in here, he decided, okay, I'm going to give you back what you lost, and then here's some more. And like, for instance, with my family. When I got sober, I had 2 children. And I got my family back plus 1. We have a little sober baby. And so God added this blessing to us. When I got into the rooms, I was financially strapped. And I look back at it's so interesting. Man, I'm out of time. With work, I started, after I got dug out of this hole, there was a really cool thing I was looking at and going through all my notes and journals. On February 2nd of 2014, so 6 years after I got sober, I finally got out of that hole. And I was starting to make some money, I guess. There's a journal entry the conversation I had with God as to, it feels like I should be doing this. It feels like I should be going down this direction. And one of that was, I swore I was never going to get back into real estate because I had some traumatic stuff go on there, and I was never going to get back into it. But it felt like I was being guided back into that. And I wrote this in my journal on February 2nd. And then I went back, and a year after that conversation, we recorded our first project to build some projects. And it's so cool and interesting to see that time frame, and taking that guidance that I got from God, faith without works is dead, by actually implementing that into my work, by going to work, doing those things. It's the same spiritual principle that I can put in all aspects of life, and it works for that. God, He's just, my life in AA crumbled, without AA crumbled. And now I'm back into AA, and God has reassembled my life. And there's so many blessings and miracles that I've got a list of like 10 of them just that it's not a coincidence, my life in AA, and to see God's hand in almost all aspects of my life, It is just amazing. You hear it all the time. I came in, alcohol brought me to my knees, and that brought me into AA, and AA brought me to God. I had no idea that was going to be the path that I took, but that's what happened. When I came into here, I was the contempt prior to investigation because you guys didn't know God. I knew God. Even though I didn't want anything to do with him, I knew him. And you guys were doing it wrong. You can't say the F word and God in the same sentence. Apparently you can. But you guys, these principles and your examples have brought me back to a life that is worth living today. I can't tell you the magic that is in these rooms. If you're new, reach your hand out. Ask somebody to take you through these steps. It is such a wonderful thing. The life that cliche of make a list of everything you want before you get into sobriety, it is so real. My life is so abundantly peaceful today. And I'll end with this. All those things have came back. My family actually likes to be around me. My in-laws want to be around me, even though I don't want to be around them. That was a joke. I've got everything back in my life. And a couple months ago, I was going through some medical stuff. And I got diagnosed with some cancer. When you hear those words, fear can overtake you quick. I remember sitting in that doctor's room and getting that news and me physically wanting to throw up on him. So I finished the conversation with him, and that old fear was coming back. And I didn't know what to do. And I remember what I've been taught in here is we turn our lives and will over to God. Our whole life. I remember walking out that room, still in that hospital, and as I'm walking out to my truck, I said, God, this is yours. I can't do this. This is yours. And within about 30 steps from that door, peace came back. That fear was gone. That's what I've learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcohol had nothing to do with my problems. It was the fear. It was the way I was looking at life, that spiritual malady. And today I have the Spirit with me. I have God directing my thoughts and my actions. And that is an amazing blessing that I have today. I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm so grateful for you, and that's all I got. Thank you.